I thought I'd make this video because I think it's important. I know this sounds, it's worth doing the research, whoever, if y'all care, if it's important, I'm sure, if this does any fixing. It's kind of a long shot. It's very likely it couldn't be, but it might be. And I want to talk about, I recently, I purchased the cologne that I purchased a large bottle of cologne, but I was trying to get the smaller kind, and they sent me a large one, so I decided to give that to my brother. I did a couple sprays, and I said, I'll give this to my brother for Christmas. And it's still a brand new bottle, put it in a box and send it to him. And it's the original green bottle. It was like really, really small. It's like literally like this big, and then it has like a little cap on there, gold cap. It looks just like the large one, but this is like a really old cologne. This cologne was, I think, on the internet said it was like in the late 70s or early 80s when they made this. It's a kind of an old man cologne, I guess you could say, but I do know that it's the cologne that I used to always use for many years going to church, because as my mom was always getting ready to go to church, I would always be fixing myself up in front of the mirror, and then she'd say, here's your cologne. And she kept it in her jewelry box. My mother had like a jewelry box that was like this big, and it had open doors to it, and it had some sort of musical box to it. And my mother didn't even know about this until I did. I remember being a little kid, and I was fascinated with this little tiny jewelry box. And I turned the bottom, I think it was on the back or the bottom, and it had a musical notation where you wind it up and it plays like a ballerina song. I don't remember if the chandelier turned, or I don't think it did. I think it just played music, and it had mirrors in it looked real fancy. Anyway, I remember that. And I don't think I've ever said that before. I remember looking at it for many years. My mom had it for like at least a couple of years, and then one day I just picked it up and just kind of looking fascinated with this, because everything was like, it was like miniature sized. Sorry, my nose is... And anyway, I used to use this cologne all the time. Sounds like I have cancer or something. I feel like I have the hiccups now. Anyway, it's this cologne that I used to have in my. It's cologne that I used to have, and my brother used to use, or my mom used to have, and I always used it. And it was a cologne, and old school, it was probably like this big. I mean, it was like really tiny, and it had like a cap on there. And it literally, back then, I don't think they make bottles like this anymore. I don't even know if they sell samples like this anymore either. You had to put your finger on there, and it was like a little dab, like you put a little dab, and you have to do this. And that's how you put it. It's not a spray. They didn't have a spray on there. And it was glass bottle green. I saw on the internet saying that it was some sort of, I think it was called Green Polo Raphael Lauren, which I know it's Polo Raphael Lauren, but I looked it up online, and even in the box that I purchased from, it online, it says Adieu Toilette, which is French. It's a French, I guess the makers are French or something, I don't know, but that translates to English as toilet water. I don't know, that's what I guess they named it. I've seen online people call it green. I feel like my lungs are, I inhaled something. I do smoke, but I'm fine. But anyway, I wanted to make this video, but this is worth looking into, okay? And, you know, I used to use this cologne, and it was given to me. It was given to my mother in front of me by a Mexican woman, a very pretty Mexican woman, short and tiny, and real petite, kind of plumpy. And I remember her looking at me, and my mom, every time, I used to go to Dillard's all the time with my mother, and my mother would put all her makeup on, and, you know, like all that girl stuff, you know, they try out different jewelry, make themselves feel beautiful, and learn how to put makeup on, or what tones at different makers, and all the different stuff they sell at Dillard's. I think it's like Dillard's and Macy's. One of them was Macy's, and I think one of them was Macy's. It was either Macy's or Dillard's, one of those. But I used to go either or, wherever that jewelry kind of place is, and the makeup stuff, particularly all the makeup type of stuff. And when I used to go there with my mother, they were real nasty, you know. And I remember I remember her expressions as she would walk away, and it was just really disrespectful. There were white people, so I know that it's not like that now so much days, but in the 80s it was. In the late 80s, racism was much more vibrant, and people were much more likely to be racist. You walk into stores and places, you know, it's the same thing. We used to go to ice skating ring, and they used to say, I hear people say racist shit at my mother. My mother would be crying on a bench, and she wouldn't tell me why. I just remember them saying it. I was like, oh, what? My mother would look, and I knew exactly how my mother behaved, because I was always in tune to how my mother was going. So much of what was going on. So my mother goes to Macy's and Dillard's, and just happened to be this one day there was a Mexican woman working there, and she spoke very good English and very good Spanish. She spoke Spanish, but she sounded like she spoke English, just like she was raised in the U.S. And I don't know if it's worth saying this, and I know this would be a long shot. I mean, at this point in my life, there's so much that's going on in the world, and so much hate and control and brainwashing, and making me believe certain things, and rewiring to what really happened to poison my head because they want to cover up who knew about what and all this. So, I don't believe it'll maybe ever uncovered, and it's very likely that if it does get uncovered, they're going to use it for their benefits. It'll transition to how they can use this event, emotion, to then say, oh, this, and this. And it gets more complicated, but they're not allowing me to explain and talk so much of this details. But I do recall we were at Dillard's, and when we went to Dillard's, my mother had the best time. I mean, I could remember going there, and my mother was having the best. Like, she was absolutely having, like, I could tell my mom was just so comfortable, because it's hard to express when you see somebody trying to, like, when you see a woman or a female trying to look pretty and trying to engage, and you can tell you're not welcome. You're not welcome there at all. And it was white, blonde women, and it was white people, and they didn't, you know, when you see an immigrant person is looking to see someone who only speaks Spanish, it put a bad vibe into, stealing America. So anyway, we got there, and my mother would go there, and you know, it's and this is what I'm talking about. It's a long shot. I know I'm kind of dragging into this 10-minute video, but the woman that used to work there could have been Cisco's mother. Yes, Cisco Adiguron, I don't know how you pronounce his last name. It's so spelled so weird. Cisco, that lives on the same, like down the street from Richard John Basili, Richard Murphy, Jeremy, Anthony. Yes, that Cisco that I talked to on the phone, who I went to high school with. We used to sit at the dinner table. He went to DeWitt Perry with me. You might want to look into that to find out if that was his mother. The reason I say this is because if I was a little kid and Cisco was the same age as I was, and I remember my mother saying that she had 2 kids, or she had 1 or 2 kids, because I overheard them. I was literally standing, and she said, they were talking about, how many kids do you have? You know, like, oh, I have 2, you have 3, whatever. And I heard this woman, and I was kind of just standing there, just kind of looking to see how she was treating my mother, because it's a very common thing, you know, and also translating. And my mother would take me into the picture of environments, because it was like a way for people to feel sorry for her, so then they would be nice to her, because she would have to take care of me. And that's sort of what a lot of women do, and that's what mothers are supposed to do. But that's how my mother navigated it. My mother, like I said, didn't know English and didn't know how to read, so it was very hard for her to then communicate a lot of the times in life. So I think it's important for me to say this, to look to find out if that was Cisco's mother. Because if Cisco's mother, and I don't know, you'll be able to find out, and you can ask Cisco's mother, or look up the employment records, if Cisco's mother ever worked at Macy's or Dillard's. Y'all have to look that up. I know that the employment records date back into the 1900s. I mean, people knew what Jesus, worked, 2,000 years ago. So it's a very good chance that you can look up, tax records or whatever, and find out if she worked there or not, or she worked for a temp service. We went there pretty often. We went there on like occasionally, but there was like a couple of times we went there for like several months where we went there a whole bunch of times. And I think it was because, my mom then wanted to get something else, or something didn't work, or she wanted to return an item. So, I don't believe that woman worked there very long, or she was there on just a temporary assignment, or just working there for. You might want to find out. I don't think that woman worked there very long, but she could have. Maybe she worked there for several years. I believe that she worked there. You can look it up to find out, because I remember she said she had 1 or 2 kids, and she was the one that was adoring me. She looked at me when I was a little kid, and she was just like, "Oh, you got a straight kid." And I remember this. I remember she was like, "You got a straight boy," and I don't know what the conversation is. I know mothers love all their children. They're always their jewels, no matter what. But there's something that happens. I don't know. I guess because I was somewhere around the age of about 6 years old. I want to say that it was right after Julian was born. Right after Julian was born. And I don't think I think someone was babysitting Julian for a day or something like that, for a few hours. But I just remember being there with my mother. Could have been right before. I don't think it was. I remember being old enough, because we didn't start going to that specific type of church wearing that cologne until I was about 7 years old. That was like the first time I ever went to that church. So I think it's important for whoever wants to look that up, is toilet water. I don't know why it's just French, but that was the cologne that my mother got from this woman, and I used it all the time. And the woman, I had that cologne. You can imagine, many times I went to churches. I don't think I finally ever ran out of. I didn't run out of that bottle for several years, because I only used it once, only for church. There wasn't any other reason I ever really used that that I can ever think of. And I think it's important because if this woman ended up being Cisco's mother that talked to my mother, because she spoke really well English, but she spoke like pretty good Spanish, but not like all like fluent, but like Spanish like I would have spoken. And I think it's worth looking into that she was the one that gave my mother that cologne that I used at church. And I think this is important. How does this relate to this conversation? Well, everyone knows about whenever I went to Richland College and I got raped by a transgender and someone was shooting me with electronic devices severely. And this person and the person that was next to her was, I still haven't been confirmed if that's her or not. I still to this day don't even know. I've only seen this girl one time, once or twice, and that was it. But it looked like her, but I only saw like sides of her face, like I saw her like once, and that was it. And and it was just very kind of quick, and Cisco was pretty protective of her. He seemed to kind of play like a father role to her, or like a guardian kind of like guide her, because she was, I don't know, I think he mentioned that she was skipping school a lot, falling asleep. She was falling asleep a lot. But that was it, So I think it's important for me to say this, because that could have been Cisco's, if Patricia Gatina, that girl that was next to her, was Cisco's sister. That means that her mother's the one that gave me that cologne, the Church Cologne, and she was very nice. I remember my mother having a great conversation. I remember being there with my mother, and I remember I was there with my mother, and when they went to the church, when they went to the Dillard's or Macy's, and my mother was just like, I could always knew that when there was just a very delightful, the woman was real petite, tiny, looked very much exactly like when I first saw Cisco's mother. I've only seen her a couple of times too, and Cisco's mother looked exactly like her. She was petite, kind of like Susie's mother. I don't know, Susie Kelly's mother. I think I've only seen Susie Kelly's mother like once or twice. But that was a story to it. Kind of petite, kind of Susie Kelly kind of looking. But I remember her having like a dark brown hair, or like a black hair. But it was like, she was a petite, kind of real short woman, kind of plumpy a little bit. Not fat, not overweight at all, just like a nice plump. And but I think it's important, if anybody wants to look this up and find out if she ever worked at Macy's or Dillard's for any type of service for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a couple days, or she worked there for a number of years or months, it could have been her, because I remember her saying that she had 1 or 2 kids. And Cisco and his sister, there's only 2 kids that lived in the house. It was a boy and a girl, that was it. So, if you might want to look that up and find out, because she said for sure that she had 1 or 2 kids. I can't remember. She said she didn't say 3. She said she had 1 or 2 kids. And I get the vibe that when I play this in my mind, when I'm standing there, because I'm literally like I'm like from here to like 5 feet away, 10 feet away. It's like 7, 10 feet away. As I'm looking at it, I'm getting the impression that this person was Cisco. I'm getting the word Cisco. Mother of Cisco. That's Cisco's mother. So you might want to go ahead, look this up, and if it turned out to be her mother, that worked out there, that'd be mind-blowing. Very mind-blowing. Because she was the same age as my mother. She was like somewhat of the same age as my mother. Could have been a little bit older. I don't know. I don't remember. It was so long ago, I couldn't really tell the difference between ages very well when I was very, very young. between my mother and this woman, but I don't think there was very much of a large gap between the two of their ages. And my mother didn't tell me her real age about the situation and what her real age was when she met my father. But that's the story to it that I thought would be important for me to say. That's a story that I think would be important for me to say if she's the one that gave it. It's a cologne. People say it's called green polo green Raphael Lauren. First time I ever. It is a green bottle and it has a horse on there playing polo, but I've never heard of people call it up until I looked on the internet. But it was the correct meaning, to my understanding, is French. Toilet water, whatever. I guess I don't know why they would name a cologne that, but that's what I used. So, yeah, it would be very mind blowing if that was her mother, because the age looked a little bit different. Within a couple of years, age different, but it's worth looking into.